Your mind already holds the power to attract opportunity and abundance. Right now, in this very moment, you possess the ability to shift your thinking in ways that will fundamentally change your relationship with money, success, and prosperity. This isn't about wishful thinking or empty promises. This is about understanding a principle that every financially successful person has either discovered by accident or learned through deliberate practice. Your thoughts create a frequency, and that frequency determines what you attract into your life. Think of your mind as a radio. A radio doesn't create the signals that travel through the air. Those signals are already there, broadcasting constantly. But if your radio isn't tuned to the right frequency, you'll never hear the music. You'll sit in silence, convinced that there's nothing to listen to, while all around you, invisible waves of sound are passing by undetected. Wealth works the same way. Opportunities are everywhere. Resources are abundant. Paths to prosperity surround you at every moment. But if your mind isn't tuned to recognize them, if your thoughts are broadcasting on a frequency of lack and limitation, you'll walk right past the very opportunities that could transform your life. Today, you're going to learn how to tune your mind to what I call the wealth frequency. This is the mental state, the thought pattern, the internal alignment that allows you to see opportunity where others see obstacles. It's the mindset that turns ideas into income, that recognizes value where others see nothing, that creates abundance from seemingly ordinary circumstances. And here's what's remarkable. You don't need special talent to access this frequency. You don't need connections or advantages or luck. You need clarity. You need focus. You need the discipline to align your thoughts with wealth instead of scarcity. That's what we're going to explore together. Not theories. Not abstract concepts. Practical, actionable understanding of how your mind either attracts or repels financial success, and exactly how to shift that dynamic starting today. Let's begin with something fundamental that most people misunderstand about wealth. They think wealth is something external, something you chase, something you have to fight for in a world of limited resources. But that's not how wealth works. Wealth begins as an internal state before it ever becomes an external reality. Every fortune that has ever been built started as a thought in someone's mind. Every business that created lasting value began as an idea. Every financial breakthrough happened because someone recognized an opportunity that others missed. And the difference between the person who sees the opportunity and the person who doesn't isn't intelligence. It's not education. It's not even work ethic, although that matters later. The difference is frequency. The difference is where their mind is tuned. Your thoughts are not passive. They're not just commentary on your life. Your thoughts are creative forces. They shape your perception, which shapes your decisions, which shape your actions, which create your results. When you think thoughts of scarcity, when you focus on what you lack, when you see the world as a place where resources are limited and success belongs to other people, you're tuning your mind to a frequency that makes you blind to opportunity. You might walk past a chance to create value and not even notice it. You might hear an idea that could change your financial life and dismiss it because it doesn't fit your mental framework. You might meet someone who could open doors for you and fail to make a connection because you're not expecting that kind of opportunity to come your way. This is not your fault. This is conditioning. Most people were raised with scarcity thinking. They heard their parents worry about money. They absorbed messages from society that wealth is difficult to attain, that it requires sacrifice and struggle, that most people will never have it. And those messages became their frequency. They became the lens through which they see every financial situation. But here's the profound truth. You can change your frequency. You can retune your mind. You can shift from scarcity to abundance, from limitation to possibility, from hoping for wealth to expecting it. And when you make that shift, when you align your thoughts with prosperity instead of lack, everything changes. Not because the external world suddenly becomes easier, but because you start seeing what was always there. You start recognizing opportunities. You start taking actions aligned with wealth creation. You start attracting people and circumstances that support your financial growth. The wealth frequency isn't mystical. It's mental discipline applied to financial success. It's the practice of consciously choosing thoughts that align with abundance and doing so consistently until that alignment becomes automatic. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas grew up with very little. His family struggled financially, and he absorbed the belief that money was hard to come by, that you had to work yourself to exhaustion just to survive. That wealth was something other people had. He carried that belief into adulthood. He worked hard, long hours, but he could never seem to get ahead. Every time he saved a little money, some unexpected expense would wipe it out. Every opportunity that came his way seemed to fall through. He was stuck, not because he wasn't trying, but because his mind was tuned to the frequency of struggle. Then something happened that changed everything. Thomas met an older man, a successful entrepreneur, at a community event. They struck up a conversation, and Thomas, feeling comfortable, confessed his frustration. He'd been working hard his whole life, but had nothing to show for it. The older man listened carefully, then asked a simple question: "What do you think about money?" Thomas didn't understand the question at first. What did he think about it? He wanted it. He needed it. That's what he thought. But the entrepreneur pressed him. No. What do you actually think when you think about money? What words come to mind? What feelings? Thomas thought about it. Anxiety, worry, scarcity, fear that there wouldn't be enough, frustration that he never had as much as he needed. The entrepreneur nodded. That's your frequency, he said. That's what you're broadcasting into the world. And the world is responding by giving you more of what you're focused on. More anxiety, more scarcity, more struggle. If you want different results, you need to change your frequency. He explained to Thomas that his thoughts about money were creating a filter that only allowed him to see evidence of financial struggle. When he looked at his life, he saw the bills, the lack, the problems. He missed the opportunities because he wasn't looking for them. He wasn't expecting them. His mind was so focused on what he didn't have that it couldn't register what was possible. So the entrepreneur gave Thomas an assignment. For 30 days, Thomas was to practice thinking about money differently. Not to deny his current situation, but to shift his mental focus. Every morning, Thomas was to spend 10 minutes visualizing himself as financially secure, not fantasizing about lottery wins, but actually seeing himself making good decisions, recognizing opportunities, creating value, and receiving compensation for that value. He was to notice throughout the day any evidence of abundance anywhere, not just in his own life, but everywhere. He was to train his mind to look for prosperity instead of lack. Thomas was skeptical, but he had nothing to lose, so he did it. The first week felt forced, artificial, but he kept going. The second week, something shifted. He started noticing small opportunities he would have overlooked before. A conversation with a coworker led to a side project. A skill he had taken for granted turned out to be valuable to someone who was willing to pay for it. Nothing dramatic, just small openings. But he took them. By the end of 30 days, Thomas had earned more from side projects than he usually made in 2 months at his regular job. More importantly, his entire relationship with money had changed. He no longer felt anxious when he thought about finances. He felt expectant. He felt like opportunities were available if he just stayed alert to them. Within a year, Thomas had started his own small business. Within 3 years, he'd built it into a 6-figure income. Not because he suddenly became smarter or more talented, but because he changed his frequency. He retrained his mind to look for abundance instead of lack. And once his mind was tuned to that frequency, he started seeing what had been invisible to him before. Consider another person, a woman named Rachel. Rachel had a good job, decent income, but she always felt like she was barely keeping her head above water. She made reasonable money, but it never seemed to be enough. There was always something else she needed, some other expense, some reason why she couldn't get ahead. She felt trapped in a cycle of earning and spending, with no real accumulation of wealth. Rachel's problem wasn't her income. It was her focus. She was focused on expenses, on what things cost, on how much she had to spend. Every financial decision was made through the lens of, can I afford this? Instead of, how can I create more value? Her mental energy was directed toward managing scarcity rather than creating abundance. A friend introduced her to the concept of wealth frequency. At first, Rachel dismissed it as positive thinking nonsense, but something about it stuck with her. She started paying attention to her own thoughts about money, and she was shocked by what she found. Almost every thought was about limitation, about not having enough, about needing to be careful, about protecting what little she had. She realized she was operating from a defensive position, trying to hold on to her current situation rather than actively building toward something better. So she made a decision. She was going to spend 1 month focusing exclusively on opportunity and abundance, not denying her expenses or being irresponsible, but shifting her mental focus. Instead of asking, can I afford this? She started asking, how can I create value that allows me to afford this? Instead of worrying about what she didn't have, she started noticing what she did have and thinking about how to leverage it. The shift was subtle but powerful. Within weeks, she'd identified 3 ways to monetize skills she already possessed. She started a small consulting practice on the side. She began investing instead of just saving, because she'd shifted from trying to protect money to trying to grow it. Her income didn't double overnight, but over the course of a year, she increased her earnings by 40%. More importantly, her stress around money disappeared. She felt in control. She felt capable. She felt like wealth was something she could create rather than something she had to chase. Rachel's external circumstances didn't change dramatically before her internal state shifted. Her internal state shifted first, and that shift created new behaviors, which created new results. That's how the wealth frequency works. Internal alignment precedes external manifestation. These stories illustrate a principle that governs all financial success. Your dominant thoughts create your financial reality. Not occasionally, not sometimes. Always. This isn't about the law of attraction or metaphysics. This is about psychology and perception. Your mind can only process a tiny fraction of the information available to it at any given moment. So it filters, it decides what to pay attention to based on what you've told it is important. If you've told your mind through repeated thought that money is scarce and hard to obtain, it will filter your experience through that lens. It will show you evidence of scarcity. It will highlight risks and obstacles. It will make you hesitant and defensive. But if you've trained your mind to expect abundance, to look for opportunity, to assume that wealth is available and attainable, it will filter your experience differently. It will highlight possibilities. It will notice connections. It will recognize value where others see nothing. Same world. Same circumstances. Different frequency. Different results. So how do you actually tune your mind to the wealth frequency? How do you move from theoretical understanding to practical application? It starts with mental rehearsal. Every financially successful person I've ever studied or worked with has one thing in common. They spend time in their mind seeing success before it happens. They visualize the outcome they want, not in vague terms, but in specific detail. They see themselves making the sale, closing the deal, receiving the payment, achieving the goal. This isn't daydreaming. This is training. When you visualize success, you're doing 2 critical things. First, you're programming your subconscious mind to accept that outcome as possible and expected. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and actual experience. If you repeatedly see yourself succeeding in your mind, your subconscious begins to accept that as your reality. And when your subconscious accepts something as real, it organizes your perception and behavior to align with that reality. Second, you're training your mind to recognize the steps that lead to that outcome. When you visualize closing a deal, your mind unconsciously starts identifying what actions would need to happen for that visualization to become real. It starts looking for those opportunities in your actual life. It starts connecting dots you wouldn't have connected otherwise. This is why visualization isn't just about feeling good. It's about practical preparation. It's about aligning your mental state with the outcomes you want so that when opportunities appear, you're ready to recognize and act on them. The practice is simple. Every morning, before you engage with the demands of your day, spend 10 minutes in visualization. Close your eyes. See yourself achieving a specific financial goal. Don't just think about it abstractly. See it as if it's happening right now. See the details. Feel the emotions. Make it as real as possible in your mind. If your goal is to close a major sale, see the conversation. See the client saying yes. See yourself receiving the payment. Feel the satisfaction and confidence that comes with that success. If your goal is to start a business, see yourself running that business successfully. See customers being served. See value being created. See money flowing in as a result of the value you're providing. Do this every single day. The same visualization or different ones, but make it a daily practice. This isn't optional if you want to operate on the wealth frequency. This is foundational. You're training your mind to expect success instead of hoping for it. You're shifting from a mindset of possibility to a mindset of expectation. And that shift changes everything about how you show up in the world. The next element is replacing scarcity thinking with abundance thinking. This requires vigilance because scarcity thoughts are automatic for most people. They've been repeated so many times that they run on autopilot. You see a price tag and your first thought is, that's expensive. You hear about an opportunity and your first thought is, that won't work for me. You consider taking a risk and your first thought is, what if I fail? These are scarcity thoughts. They're focused on lack, limitation, and loss. They keep you tuned to the frequency of struggle. Abundance thinking is different. When you see a price tag, instead of thinking, that's expensive, you think, how can I create enough value to make that affordable? When you hear about an opportunity, instead of thinking, that won't work for me, you think, how could I make that work? When you consider taking a risk, instead of thinking, what if I fail? You think, what if I succeed? This doesn't mean being reckless. It means being opportunity, focused instead of problem focused. The problems will always be there. You can always find reasons why something won't work. But if that's where your mental energy goes, that's all you'll see. Abundance thinking trains your mind to look for solutions, for possibilities, for ways to create value and capture opportunity. It's a discipline. It's catching yourself every time a scarcity thought arises and consciously replacing it with an abundance thought. At first, this feels unnatural. You're going against years of conditioning. But if you stay consistent, if you keep redirecting your thoughts toward abundance, it becomes automatic. The wealth frequency becomes your default setting. You also need to focus daily on expectation of opportunity. Most people wake up and face their day with a mindset of, let's see what happens. That's passive. That's leaving your financial future to chance. People who operate on the wealth frequency wake up expecting opportunity. They expect to encounter situations where they can create value. They expect to meet people who can help them or who they can help. They expect ideas and insights to come to them. And because they expect it, they recognize it when it appears. This expectation isn't arrogance. It's not assuming that good things will just fall in your lap. It's assuming that if you stay alert, if you pay attention, if you look for ways to create and capture value, you will find them. Because they're always there. The question is whether you're tuned in enough to see them. Start your day by setting this expectation. Tell yourself, today I will encounter opportunity, I will recognize it. I will act on it. Then stay alert throughout your day. Notice conversations that could lead somewhere. Notice problems that you could solve. Notice needs that you could fill. Most people miss these because they're not looking for them. You'll see them because you've tuned your mind to expect them. Another critical piece is surrounding yourself with wealth. Aligned influences. Your environment shapes your frequency. If you spend your time with people who complain about money, who see the world as unfair, who believe success is for other people, you'll absorb that frequency. You'll start thinking the same thoughts. You'll start seeing the world through the same limiting lens. But if you surround yourself with people who are building wealth, who think in terms of opportunity, who believe in their ability to create value and be compensated for it, you'll absorb that frequency instead. This doesn't mean abandoning everyone in your life. It means being intentional about who you give your mental and emotional energy to. Seek out mentors, even if informal ones, who operate on the wealth frequency. Read books by people who have built financial success. Listen to their stories. Study their thinking. Your mind learns by pattern recognition. If you consistently expose it to patterns of wealth creation, it will start adopting those patterns as its own. If you consistently expose it to patterns of financial struggle, it will adopt those instead. Choose your influences wisely. Choose content, conversations, and relationships that reinforce the frequency you want to operate on. You must also reinforce wealth. Align thoughts through repetition and discipline. Once is not enough. Thinking an abundant thought one time doesn't override years of scarcity conditioning. You have to repeat it. You have to say it again and again until your subconscious accepts it as truth. This is why affirmations work when done correctly. Not because saying something makes it magically true, but because repetition rewrites your mental programming. Every morning, state your financial intention. State it as if it's already true. I am financially abundant. I recognize and act on opportunity. I create value and I am well compensated for it. Money flows to me easily and naturally. These aren't lies. They're instructions to your subconscious. They're tuning mechanisms. They're shifting your frequency from lack to abundance. Say them daily. Say them until they feel true. Say them until thinking any other way feels foreign. And as you do this, watch your perception shift. Watch opportunities start appearing. Watch your financial situation begin to reflect your internal alignment. There's a moment in this process that marks a fundamental turning point. It's the moment when you realize that wealth is not random. It's not luck. It's not about being in the right place at the right time, although timing matters. Wealth is the natural outcome of mental alignment and consistent focus. Every person who has created lasting financial success did so by thinking differently than most people think. They tune their minds to a frequency that most people never access because most people never realize it exists. But you know it exists now. You understand the principle, and that understanding gives you a choice. You can continue operating on the frequency you've been on, the one shaped by your past and your conditioning. Or you can make the deliberate decision to shift to the wealth frequency, to align your thoughts with abundance, to train your mind to see opportunity instead of obstacle. This isn't about getting rich quick. This is about fundamental mental realignment that creates lasting change. The process takes discipline. It takes consistency. But it works. Not because I say so, but because it's how your mind functions. When you change your dominant thoughts, you change your perception. When you change your perception, you change your decisions. When you change your decisions, you change your results. The path from thought to wealth is direct. The question is whether you're willing to walk it. Let me give you a practical framework for daily practice. This is how you maintain alignment with the wealth frequency. Once you understand the principle, your day has 3 key moments for mental reinforcement: morning, midday, and evening. Each serves a different purpose in keeping you tuned to abundance. In the morning, your first task is alignment. Before you check your phone, before you engage with demands, before you let the external world set your frequency, you set it yourself. Spend 10 minutes in visualization, as I mentioned earlier. See success, see opportunity. See yourself creating value and receiving abundance. Feel it as real. Then state your intention for the day. Today I operate on the wealth frequency. Today I recognize opportunity. Today I create value. Today I expect abundance. This sets your filter for the day. It primes your mind to see what supports your financial growth instead of what contradicts it. At midday, you do a course correction. Life happens. Challenges arise. It's easy to slip back into scarcity thinking when you're dealing with problems. So take 5 minutes, ideally around lunch or early afternoon, to check your frequency. How have you been thinking? Have you been focused on problems or solutions? Have you been seeing obstacles or opportunities? If you've drifted toward scarcity, consciously redirect. Remind yourself of your morning intention. Reset your expectation of opportunity. This midday check keeps you from spending the entire day off frequency. It's a recalibration that ensures you don't lose the morning alignment. In the evening, you reinforce. Before you sleep, review your day through the lens of abundance. What opportunities did you encounter, even small ones? What went well? What evidence of abundance did you see? This isn't about ignoring problems. It's about training your mind to notice what supports your wealth frequency instead of only noticing what contradicts it. Then, as you fall asleep, visualize again. See tomorrow's success. See yourself waking up aligned. See yourself moving through the day on the wealth frequency. Your subconscious is most receptive right before sleep. Use that time to program it with thoughts of abundance. These 3 moments, practiced daily, will keep you tuned to the wealth frequency. They'll become automatic over time. But in the beginning, you have to be intentional. You have to make them non-negotiable parts of your routine, because your frequency will drift if you don't maintain it. The default setting for most people is scarcity. You have to consciously choose abundance every single day until that becomes your new default. Understand that this is subtle work. You're not going to feel dramatically different after 1 day of practice. The change is gradual, but it's cumulative. Each day you spend aligned with wealth frequency builds on the previous day. The neural pathways strengthen. The perception sharpens. The opportunities become more visible. And over time, your financial reality begins to reflect your internal state. The money you attract, the opportunities you recognize, the decisions you make, all of it starts flowing from a place of abundance instead of scarcity. You might be wondering, what about practical action? What about strategy, skill development, hard work? Don't those matter? Of course they do. But here's what most people don't understand. Right action flows from right thinking. When your mind is tuned to the wealth frequency, you naturally take actions aligned with wealth creation. You pursue opportunities. You develop valuable skills. You work with focus and intention. But when your mind is tuned to scarcity, even the smartest strategies feel like struggle. Even hard work doesn't produce proportional results because you're fighting against your own internal frequency. The external actions matter, but they're exponentially more effective when your internal state is aligned. That's why we start with mindset. That's why we focus on frequency first. Because once your frequency is right, the actions become obvious, the path becomes clear, the results follow naturally. You are not powerless over your financial situation. You're not at the mercy of the economy, of your background, of circumstances beyond your control. Those things influence your situation, yes, but they don't determine it. What determines your financial future is the frequency you operate on, the thoughts you think consistently, the focus you maintain, the expectation you carry. Wealth begins in the mind before it manifests in the bank account. Always, without exception. Every dollar you will ever earn starts as a thought about your value, your capability, your worthiness to receive. Every opportunity you will ever capture starts as an expectation that opportunities exist for you. Every financial breakthrough you will ever experience starts as a mental alignment with abundance. This is not theory. This is how it works. And now that you know this, you have a responsibility, not to me, to yourself, the responsibility to use this understanding, to apply these principles, to tune your mind to the wealth frequency and maintain that alignment with discipline and consistency. Because knowing is not enough. Understanding is not enough. You have to practice. You have to make this a daily commitment. You have to choose every single morning to align your thoughts with abundance instead of lack. The wealth frequency is available to you right now, not someday. Not when you've proven yourself or earned the right to it. Now, you access it by deciding that from this moment forward, you're going to think differently about money, opportunity, and your capacity to create value. You maintain it by practicing the principles I've shared with you. Visualization, abundance thinking, expectation of opportunity, wealth-aligned influences, consistent mental reinforcement, These aren't complicated. They're simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. It requires discipline to redirect your thoughts when they drift towards scarcity. It requires commitment to maintain your morning, midday, and evening practices even when you don't feel like it. It requires faith to keep aligning with abundance, even before you see external proof that it's working. But if you do this, if you commit to operating on the wealth frequency, your financial life will transform. Not because I promise it, because that's what happens when you align your dominant thoughts with prosperity. Opportunities appear, ideas come. Connections form, value is created. Wealth follows. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's the natural result of mental alignment maintained with discipline and focus. You already have everything you need to begin. You have a mind capable of visualization. You have the ability to choose your thoughts. You have the discipline to practice daily. That's enough. That's all it takes. The wealth frequency is not reserved for a select few. It's available to anyone willing to tune their mind to it. Starting today. Starting now. The only question is whether you'll make the choice, whether you'll commit to the practice, whether you'll maintain the alignment even when it feels challenging. Because it will feel challenging sometimes. Your old frequency will pull at you. Scarcity thoughts will arise. Doubt will creep in. But if you stay committed, if you keep redirecting your mind toward abundance, those old patterns will weaken. The wealth frequency will become your new normal. And when that happens, when operating on abundance is as automatic as scarcity used to be, you'll look back at this moment and recognize it as the turning point. The moment when you stopped leaving your financial future to chance and started creating it with intention. That moment is here. That choice is yours. Tune your mind to the wealth frequency. Maintain that alignment with discipline. Trust the process. And watch as your financial reality begins to reflect the abundance you've been cultivating in your mind. This is how wealth is created. This is how success is built. This is how you move from financial struggle to financial freedom. One thought at a time, one day at a time, with clarity, focus, and unwavering commitment to operating on the frequency of abundance. Your wealth journey begins in your mind. Everything else follows from there.